I ran out of time during my Virtual AppSec presentation for OWASP Israel, but since I had the whole setup, I just wanted to make a short video on that and to hopefully put the message through. This was the application we were talking about, a very simple, very basic hotel booking website. And the idea was that we were looking for parameters to fuzz. And sometimes, even if we didn't have any parameter, as we can see here, there still were things we could hopefully fuzz. And the HTTP method is one of them. Otherwise, the user agent, the cookies, the referrer, anything you can see on your screen is worth fuzzing. Of course, most of the time, this will be wasting your time, but still better than nothing. Here now, I will just fuzz the HTTP method just to remember what we came up with. Burp is not really used to fuzzing this, so it suggests that I fuzz the PHP session ID, which I don't really care about now, so I'll only choose my HTTP method. And for payloads, I will just go and load HTTP methods. This is a list of HTTP methods, as you can see, and I'll just start fuzzing. Again, as I mentioned several times, it's not really worth or relevant to do the fuzzing with Burpsuite's Community Edition, because that would be too slow. Here, I only have 32 payloads that I'm using to fuzz, but in a real scenario where I have 320 or 3,200 or 32,000 payloads, then that would take quite some time, which is not ideal. And here what I'm looking for is any anomaly, anything that is out of the ordinary, anything different, really. And what I can see so far is connect, the HTTP method connect returned something different, a status code of 400, and a different response length, which could be worth analyzing further. And if I look at the response, yes, the server couldn't understand what my browser was trying to say. But in the response, with the error message, I got some information about the server and the infrastructure, the PHP version, and the server was running at localhost port 80. Interesting information. Otherwise, I will just continue looking around this application, trying to find something interesting, something that could be worth looking into. And by something, I mean parameters. So for any request that I send, or I've sent, just browsing the website, I will be looking at any possible or potential parameter. None so far. Here I have a booking page that could be interesting. It's asking for a check-in date, for a checkout date, for my name, and my phone number. Okay, book now. Let's see what happens, what really happens. And here you can see that I, in fact, have a few parameters. I have one in the URL, a room name, duplex, and I have several in the post data. All these will be worthy of fuzzing. Now let's try with the obvious and easy one. Let's see if anything happens. I will be using Wfuzz with the word list provided. In your Kali Linux, you will find it under user share and Wfuzz word list and injections, and the payloads I'll be using are all attack. This one is interesting because it will give me some idea about the direction I can take. As you can see here, I do have very generic payloads for different types of vulnerabilities. Anything from directory traversal to cross-site scripting to SQL injection, they're all here. And based on which ones result in a different answer, then I can focus my further fuzzing efforts on that. As you remember, fuzzing was not a straight line, it was a cyclical process. So I have a data set, I fuzz, and based on the responses, I go back to my data set and maybe change or tweak it further. So this is the list I'll be using, since it's probably a rather acceptable compromise. As you remember, fuzzing for me is a way to save time in the testing process, especially in cases where the customer is asking for the penetration testing report yesterday. So always helps. And what I'll be fuzzing is this first parameter I found in the URL, which would be very straightforward. And Wfuzz, also interesting tool, very easy to use. And now all I have to do is analyze the responses. What I can consider a baseline response would be this. In that case, it's sending just an A or a 1. And I can see that these return a 200 response code with a certain amount of data. So now I'll be looking for anything out of the ordinary. Some of the responses might be larger based on the payload, especially if the payload is returned in the response. Then since this is a larger payload than that, it's normal that I have more characters in the response. So that's nothing to worry really about. Going through OWASP top 10, maybe SQL injections would be the most dangerous or the most critical bugs. That's why I spent some time looking at those payloads, those that could be relevant to SQL injection. It doesn't really seem to do anything. Just to confirm, maybe we can use SQL map since it's there, why not? And probably it will return the same thing, that it's not injectable. Anyway, good to know. Of course, it doesn't mean that it's not injectable at all. It's just not a low-hanging fruit. That's how we should maybe think about it. Okay. Going back to my request, I also had some data here, which I can also fuzz using Wfuzz. And that's what I'll do now. Again, I'll be using the same word list or payload list, whatever you want to call it. List injections and all attacks, that's where I start usually. And since I'll be fuzzing post data, that's where I have to use -d and specify where I want my payloads to go. And then it will be just adding the URL. Unfortunately, Wfuzz is not very forgiving in that writing order. It's not like Nmap. I'm not fuzzing here anything. Okay. So again, I just go quickly over the results, and I can see that some of them, return a very short answer. So 3,000, almost 3,200 characters response, 25 characters. It could be interesting. So maybe what I can do now is use one of these payloads and see what really happens. And for this, I can use a burp again. That would be much easier than to go through the browser and see what happens if I place the payload that resulted in only 25 characters response here. Now I just hit send without changing anything, just to have a baseline to see what the normal response is. And now I'll just add the payload and see what happens. Data here cannot insert it. Okay. Is it an SQL injection? I don't know, but it looks like this application will have a problem at this level. And based really on what I have, this was a regular example, but I might have an admin page with a just basic login. I'll just log in now, see what happens. Wrong username, wrong password, but what really happened? Let's have a look. Again, I'm sending two post parameters, email username and password with submit login. Submit login is not really worth playing with at this stage. I'll just focus on the initial two at first. So I just go back to my Wfuzz, and again, same approach. And now I'll be inserting the two new parameters I found, and I'll start with fuzzing. I'll start fuzzing with the email username. Wfuzz allows you to do this simultaneously for different number of payloads, but since we are now just trying to understand how that whole thing works, not really necessary. And that should be it. Let's see what happens. It goes again through all the payloads, and I see that baseline is 2100 something, and going through the different categories of payload. Of course, this will not work because the target is a Windows machine. What I'm looking for again is an SQL injection, because at the end of the day, this was a login screen, and hopefully a login bypass or bypassing the authentication could be interesting for us. And I see that here, once I insert the single quote into the equation, I get a response that is larger compared to the other ones. So what is this? What happens? Again, quick way to check for this is to use Burpsuite and send this payload. Again, I'll be using repeater, send to repeater, just send it out to see what happens. And okay, wrong username and password. Here is the error message I get. What happens when I just insert the payload I just seen? Okay, as you can see, I get the MySQL error. So this could be for me the beginning of an SQL injection. An easy way to test it is to tweak a bit the payloads we are using with Wfuzz. Instead of using all attacks, of course, I could use the SQL injection specific payloads. That could be an approach, like so. Again, I see that there are two distinct kind of responses. One is 2500 and the other is 2100. So there is something definitely going on here. And another approach would be to use a list of payloads specific to that case. For example, that could help me bypass a potential login screen. Like these are the payloads that you would typically see. So now I'll just go over this one more time, and you can see it's much quicker compared to, for example, SQL map. Okay, so this one seems to return something interesting, or this one very basic. And let's see what happens now if I use this payload here. I'll leave the password for whatever for now. And here, the error that I have just seen. And if I look at the error, in fact, it's just MySQL complaining about type of query. I'll just try this. Doesn't work. Just another small tweak, and this time it should be good. Okay, we're in. So it was just 2 or 3 easy steps to find something critical. And then I can still keep investigating. Once now I'm logged in, I'm in the admin section, I can just use the same methodology. For example, here I have an add room category. I'll make Ruby. Number of rooms, I will have 2 rooms, and number of bed 1, and type double, and test. Price per night, it will be 1000. That's not really important for me now. It's just for me a matter of capturing what's being sent out here. And again, we can start the whole process from the beginning using all attack. Based on what type of attack seems to work, you will see that Wfuzz has many word lists. We can just go there, share Wfuzz word lists, and under word list you will see that we have general, injections, other, stress, vulns, web services. Whatever you can think of, probably they have it. So all attacks is the one we started with, but we can just focus on bad characters. As I mentioned during the presentation, these are hostile data. So just a basically list of things that could possibly break the application. Your usual perpetrators are here, or you can have something specific to directory traversal. And depending on your target, different possibilities. Once I know where to go with all attack, I can, of course, use a more specific payload category. So this was the usual approach, the initial approach. Once I'm logged in, like here, then I will also need to include the cookie in my requests. So instead of just sending this one, I could just, for example, going back to Wfuzz, clear. I'll be using the all attack word list again, all attacks. And now I will have again some post parameters. I'll just start fuzzing with the room name here. And I will also need to add my cookie. For good practice, let's add it at the beginning. -B to add any cookie. And the cookie is here. All I need now is the URL. Copy URL, and here we go. It goes through the whole list. What I have to do now, again, back to basics, going over which payloads triggered anything and see what could happen. And since I was just fuzzing, the back end, and we had some cross-site scripting payloads, I see that they have reflected in the front end, as you can see here. So that's why at the beginning of the presentation, I told you there might be some problems when you are using fuzzing in a live environment. This is one of the problems that you might have. And that would piss off some people because you have just screwed over their database, and they might not be happy about it. Anyway, all the payloads, I can see them here. So every time it has added a room. I see that cross-site scripting works. Okay. Will SQL injection work? Again, just a matter of using the right payload set, the right data set, and just tweaking the attack a little bit so that we can understand really if there is a problem or not. There are different word lists that you can use. These are Wfuzz's own word lists that are already loaded in Kali, but you have some other resources that I strongly suggest you check out. Seclists, of course, is one of them, where you will find different types of payloads for different kind of vulnerability, or fuzzing different services like JSON or LDAP, depending on what you are facing. And there's also some more specific word lists that you can find here and there. You can even create your own by using tools such as Qul or Crunch, and just tweak around with cat, grep, wget, whatever you can find. The idea is to trigger something with the application. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you have any questions, always happy to answer them. I'll put the link for the slides in the description. Thank you again for watching.